So, like the informational piece, and we talked about the four reasons why informational social influence kind of kicks in. There are reasons why normative social influence kicks in as well. And this is what's called the social impact theory. And what happens is in the social impact theory, it talks about how and why normative social influence kicks in. So the first variable in this thing is going to be strength, and that's how important is the group to you. All right. So the way it works is the more important the group is, the more likely you are to engage in normative social influence. And this could be, one of those things where, like take me for example. So when I was in high school, I was a pretty good soccer player, and the way the soccer player people kind of dressed was that they had a lot of their ears were pierced. A lot of the soccer players wore like rings on their fingers and things like that. And so you better believe that when I was old enough that I would do the same. So I wore like 4 or 5 rings on my fingers. I had 3 piercings in my ears because that's what everyone else did. And because I thought being a soccer player, being part of that culture was so important that I also wanted to identify with the group. And no one put a gun to my head and said I had to do that. But that's just what I did. That's how it worked. When I went to undergrad at Kansas State, a lot of the fraternity members, they would all dress the same, where they would wear like polo shirts. And what they would do is they would flick their collar up. So they would just be up. And they would wear visors. So in the 2000s, that was that. And that's what everyone wore, right? And it's because the group was that important to them. All right. So the first is strength. The second is immediacy, and I mean literally how close the group is to you, like physically close. So if you're in the same room as a group member or group members, then you're more likely to engage in normative social influence and act like them, versus if you're the only person in your group in that room. All right, and I'm sure you have friends who they act differently when they're in their group of people and they're around them versus when they're just around you by themselves. And finally, how many people? So this was a follow-up to the Asch study. And what they did in the Asch study is they were looking at conformity. So percent of errors, this is how many people conformed. And what they did is they manipulated the number of Confederates. All right. And what's going to happen is you have anywhere from 1 Confederate all the way to 13 Confederates. And what they found is that as conformity, in terms of conformity, is that as the number of people grow, you're more likely to conform. And what you see here is once you get to about 4 people, 5 people, it starts to kind of level out. So it pretty much forms a straight line. But as you go from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, from 3 to 4, it's going to increase. All right. So eventually there gets to a point where it stops. But what research has suggested is that the more people that are in your group, there you go. Now, social impact theory, what it basically says is you have these 3 things: strength, immediacy, and number. And what's going to happen is the more of those that are happening, the more likely you are to conform. So you can imagine a case where, let's say you are really big in your sorority, okay? And let's say you're in a sorority meeting. Well, there's a lot of you, so that's number. Immediacy, they're physically right there in the meeting room with you, so they're right there, so that's 2. And then 3, if you really, really care about your sorority, then you're it's not nothing's definite, but you are going to be more likely to use normative social influence. Now, if let's say all those 3 things are present, let's say only 2 of the 3 things are present. Let's say you're not really big into your sorority, like your mom or dad made you rush, but you're kind of like, I don't really care about it. You're still gonna likely to conform because number and immediacy are there, but because strength is low, you're not going to conform as if someone was with the same things if strength was high. So that's the way these things work. All right, now we're going to switch gears. So okay, we have influences. Now let's talk about obedience, because that's its own kind of special piece here. So obedience. So this is the Milgram study, and what they did is they did something called the teacher-learner paradigm. And in the teacher-learner paradigm, what you see a case where the participant comes in and they're told that they are the teacher and they have to teach people pairs of words. All right. So the participant's the teacher, and the pair of words are, they kind of don't really go together, but they might. So like blue box, nice day. So these are just random examples that I came up with. But you can see, so what's going to happen is they're going to teach this to the participant. And what's going to happen is it's kind of like a multiple choice. So what I'm going to do then is, if I'm the teacher, I'm going to say blue, box, trash can, wall, ceiling. And then you have to indicate the correct answer, which is box. All right, because that's what you learned. Now what's going to happen is if the confederate, the learner, if the confederate gets it wrong, then they get a shock. So this is the shock machine. You can see the picture of it right here in the left corner as well. What's going to happen is there's voltage, and the volts range from 75 to 330. And then after that, there's actually, I think it's these three, say XXX on it, meaning like death. And what's going to happen is you can see these little switches right here. These are the switches. And what's going to happen with those switches is as soon as the participant gets the first one wrong, so all these switches are up, and as soon as the participant gets one wrong, they do one switch. And so that's like one switch right here, the first one. But then it stays down. So you have to continue to get increasingly harsh shocks because you can't repeat a shock, if that makes sense. So once the button's down, it stays down. Now what's going to happen is they're going to start teaching. They get it wrong, you shock them. All right? And once again, you must go up. You can't fluctuate your shocks. You can't go up or down. You can't go up and down, up and down. It's stuck. All right. Now let's work through the procedure. So the participant comes in, and what's going to happen is they're told that they are going to interact with someone else, and they get to be the teacher, and the other person gets to be the learner. Now these are actual still shots from the Milgram study. It's in your book as well. Sorry, it's in your book as well. So this is Milgram right here. That's Milgram right here. All right. This is the participant right here. This is actually the confederate. All right. Now what's happening here in this picture is the confederate is getting hooked up to the shock machine. So the participant sees it, and the participant is in there as well. Now the participant, what's really cool about this is they get shocked themselves just a little bit. So they know it's real and they feel it. All right. Now, after they feel a shock, then the confederate gets hooked up. And the confederate says something very interesting. The confederate says, I just wanted you guys to know that I have a mild heart condition. Not a big deal. Just I wanted you to know that. All right. Now, what happens is after the person is hooked up, they go their separate ways. So this is what the room looks like. All right, so this is the confederate here. This is the participant, and there's a wall separating them. This is the shock machine here, and Milgram is going to be sitting right here. Now, what's going to happen is eventually the experiment goes just fine. The experiment goes just fine, and what's going to happen then is the learner is going to start to get the answer wrong. All right, the learner is going to start to get the answer wrong, and they're going to start shocking them. Now, eventually, 75 volts, not a big deal. So eventually, the shocks start going up. And then what happens is the learner starts to yell. He starts to make noises like that. Like the shocks start to hurt. And now, the reaction for most people is whenever you think you're causing pain to someone, the first thing people do is they kind of turn their head and they look back to look at Milgram like that. Now, what's interesting about this is where the obedience part comes in. Milgram says the experiment requires that you continue. All right, that's all Milgram says. The experiment requires that you continue. All right. Now, eventually, after the eventually the participant starts to scream, "Ow! Ouch!" And then eventually they start to say, "Get me out of here! I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore." And then, if what happens is, as the experiment keeps going, you hear a thud like this. And then the teacher says, blue, box, wallet, table, picture. And they hear nothing. The confederate says nothing. So you got to assume that you just killed somebody. Right? You shocked someone so hard the last time, and they have a heart condition. There you go. You hear nothing. Now the question, and then the real participant, the teacher, once again looks at Milgram. And every time Milgram is looked at, they always say something similar to the effect of the experiment requires that you continue. And so the question then becomes, how many people go all the way to the XXX mark? Okay. So, and this is what the results show. So this is on the x-axis here, or so y-axis, right? The percent of people who go on. The x-axis here, this is the voltage. You can see the voltage there. All right. You see where it says XXX. And what's going to happen is, you see these little dots right here, right there, right there, right there. That's where the participant, once again, starts to complain, or the Confederate starts to complain, pleads to be let out, begs to be let out. And here, okay, this is where they scream, they hit the table, and then there's no answer. And what you see is something where 66% of people still went to the XXX. All right, 66% of people went all the way. Why? Why would you do that? If you were shocked, or if you were shocking someone and they hit the ground like that, you would think that that's pretty much like, hey, look, I'm done. Or if they're pleading, please let me out, it hurts, it hurts. You would think a lot of people would be like, okay, I'm done, like I'm out of here. But nope, 66%, 2/3 of people went all the way. Now, does it still happen today? What I want you guys to do is pause this YouTube video and open up and look at both of these. All right, and then, so pause this and then look at those, and then we'll discuss those real quick. So do that. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you did what I said and looked at those things. So the first video, that was done by a man named Berger. And what you see with the Berger video is ethically you cannot do the full Milgram study today. Even though at the end of the study, the participant came out and or the Confederate came out and was like, I'm done, like everything's fine, it's not really me. The participant is definitely not in the same psychological state from which he came. And what you saw in this, the first video with the Berger video, is hopefully you saw the case where what you have is you have participants who are really uneasy, right? You even saw that electrician guy, like how much he was sweating and how uneasy he really was, and he did go all the way. Right, for the Berger study, you can't go, like, once again, ethically they had to stop instead of going all the way to the XXX. And, you know, what's happening here is this still happens today. And the YouTube video, you know, what you saw was first a clip of the McDonald's thing. That was really messed up. So in the McDonald's issue, what happened was, if you didn't catch it all, was that a person came in claiming to be like a higher up from McDonald's, had this person come in, this employee who got strip searched, had to do these humiliating behaviors, had to engage in like oral sex, and just these terrible things, when really it was a hoax. Like that, it was just a made up person. And the question was, why did the manager let that go on? Right? Why did they let that go on? And even the good thing is that ethically we can't do this. That's a great thing. But reality TV can. So the YouTube video that you saw was I don't think that that show's on anymore, but it was this reality TV show. Someone stole a baby. Someone stole a baby. That's all I gotta say about it. Someone stole a baby. Someone roofied somebody in that video. Someone stole a wallet. And it's the question then becomes like, why are we doing this? What is happening? And hopefully we'll get to that answer on the very next video. But I hope you guys looked at these videos. What's cool about the Berger video, the first one, was that in our reading club piece, the next one, we're actually going to read that study. So the study that came from that data he collected, we're actually going to read it.